I'm Michael James, and I'm here with Emilio Davis, the engineer, and we are here for you with another edition of the Live from the Heartland show. We are broadcast every Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on our home base, WLUW 88.7, and we are also on CAN TV. This week, we're going to talk with Heather Booth and Katy Hogan about things that people can do in order to turn out the vote in the election, which is coming up very quickly and very important. And then we're going to go out to Seattle and talk to Ron Schulz, who is an old friend who's been following the show for a long time and has a new book out called Chicago Rage. We'll talk with him. So let's get started. A little bit of news, things that caught my attention. President Biden gave a talk to the country last night over the ex-president and the Make America Again crowd destroying democracy. This follows his calling them out last week about being semi-fascist, which he took some heat on, but got a lot of accolades. Biden is calling on Americans to resist threats to democracy. On a similar note, former Republican Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, has been pushing advertisements that falsely claim the 2020 election was stolen from Donald Trump in order to arouse anger. This is according to the House committee investigating the January 6th Capitol attack. Also down south in Georgia, Lindsey Graham, he's from South Carolina, but he's been ordered to appear before the Georgia grand jury, and the courts say he must do that. Also, Governor Kemp, who has been called before the grand jury, investigating the 2020 election and events around it. Kemp has to testify too, although he gets to do it after the next election. Moving on a little bit. Voting and elections. Up in Alaska, happy to say that Sarah Palin lost her race to Mary Peltova. It was a ranked choice voting system, special election to serve out the term of, I think his name was Don Young. I left it, but I got rid of it. And Peltova won the election. She has to run again in November. But this was a good sign that Palin was beaten by the first Alaska Native to go to Congress. And Peltova, I saw her in an interview last night, and she said, well, she wants to defend the rights of the indigenous people. They are only 13% of the population in Alaska, and she will be looking to serve everybody's needs. Let me see. Also on that same note, at least around elections and stuff, Ginny Thomas, who is the wife of the Supreme Court Justice Thomas, it turns out she pressed Wisconsin lawmakers to overturn Biden's 2020 victory. Newsweek has reported she attempted to sway, 29 people, as well as trying to do that also that 29 was in Arizona, because she's also trying to sway electoral decision makers in both Wisconsin and Arizona, and there are more calls for her to be called into account. On the memoriam front, I have no deaths of friends to share. Oh, that's great. On the environment, Pakistan, a third of the country is underwater. Pay attention to that, because also a report coming out, major sea level rise is caused by melting ice in Greenland. The ice cap is melting. It's inevitable. The loss will contribute to a minimum rise of 27 centimeters or 10.6 inches, regardless of what climate action is taken. Out in Nebraska, a week ago, this came up. The medical marijuana initiative there did not pass. It needed a certain number of votes. So in Nebraska, there is no medical marijuana, no recreational marijuana. On the labor front, National Public Radio reports that the U.S. support for labor unions is at 71%. And that follows wide-ranging efforts both from Amazon and Starbucks employees to organize. And the Guardian reports that Starbucks and Amazon have been accused of dragging their feet on union contracts. After successful unionization drives, experts say the companies will fight to the end to prevent the next step. In other words, a union. That's not good. Okay. A little bit from around the world. Just coming up on the New York Times, a vote in Chile that could transform indigenous rights. A proposed constitution would enshrine some of the world's most extensive indigenous rights, but those reforms have become the focal point of a campaign to reject the new text. The Mapuche people, Mapuche, beat back the Inca invaders. They fended off the Spanish colonizers. And now, centuries later, they have continued to wage a battle for recognition of their territories in northern Chile. Now, in what could be one of the biggest victories for indigenous peoples around the world in modern history, the Mapuches are on the verge of achieving much of what they have been fighting for. There will be an election Sunday in Chile on a new constitution that, if approved, would enshrine these extensive rights for indigenous people. On the sports front, it's been really wonderful to watch Serena Williams. She's won her 2 matches now. She and her sister Venus did lose last night in doubles. I'm sure she's going to be a little tired today going into her match on Friday night. But she said she's going to retire. She's walking it back just a little bit with all these successes. We'll see what happens. And close to home in Rogers Park, Network 49 and the 49th Ward Democrats are holding a rally and petition signing event to show support for the re-election of our Alderwoman Maria Hadden. This event is going to take place September 10th, 11 a.m. in what is now being called the Glenwood Alfresco Plaza. That's the 6900 block of Glenwood, just south of the old Heartland Cafe site. And it's going to be a great event and really in support of our current Alderwoman, who I think is doing a really fine job. There's also a new Network 49 Environmental Committee working with Eugene Field School and Loyola University. Contact us via Network 49. You can find that on Facebook, etc. Okay, so it's time to talk politics. Time that we bring on a couple of wonderful women, Heather Booth and Katy Hogan, who are going to talk a little bit about what people can do in the days leading up to the midterm elections, not only in terms of phone calls, visiting, even giving some money. So let's take a musical break. We're going to let Emilio pick that, and we'll be right back with Heather Booth and Katy Hogan here on Live from the Heartland, WLUW.org or 88.7 on the left end of your dial. Okay, we're listening to the Live from the Heartland radio or TV or internet show. I'm Michael James, and it's time to talk politics. We've been talking a lot about the upcoming midterms, what's going on, and what activists should be doing. So I've asked 2 people to join me today, 2 of my favorite people, 2 people I admire highly. That would be Katy Hogan, my longtime business and political partner, and Heather Booth, who many of you may know historically from her work with the Midwest Academy in the vanguard of women's access to abortion rights with Jane, and sometimes an activist with the Democratic Party. So good morning to the 2 of you, Katy Hogan and Heather Booth. How are you both doing today?
Hi, Michael.
I'm always better when I'm with Katy Hogan and Michael James. They are long distance movement runners. Katy was truly my campaign partner in the Harold Washington effort. She was the side and many other efforts. And Michael James, we go back to the days of Join Jobs or Income Now, organizing in Uptown. And anyway, it's just a delight to be back with you. Movement long distance runners, and that's what we hope people on this call, the podcast, the video will do. A long distance runner do the work that's needed in less than 70 days to turn this country around.
Well, it's coming up, and I've got the visuals for both you and me, Heather, but Katy is somehow, I'm the Luddite. I'm not sure what's going on, but we can hear Katy, so we're going to talk a little politics. And let's start off with Heather. In your long career, a strong career in electoral politics, and not talking here about the movement side, but how would you describe the importance of the 2022 midterm elections?
God, I think right now we are on a knife's edge between democracy and autocracy. And as much as so many of us who are watching this show or are listening in have spent our lives saying we need to make this a better democracy, a more perfect union, and that is still true. There's a long way to go. But in fact, what we're now facing are this MAGA faction of the Republican Party that's dismantling what democracy we have, undermining it, particularly for people of color, for young people. But the truth is, for anyone who wants to see something like would be a free and fair election. And so what's on the ballot this November is reproductive freedom, is voting rights, is whether or not there'll be assault weapons on the streets, and really whether or not there'll be a future of democracy. On the other hand, because we also represent the majority of this country, if we get people out to vote and engage them with 2 more votes in the Senate, withholding the House, we can undo that filibuster rule and move through much more legislation at the federal level that we'd like to see. And then, of course, they're the important state and local campaigns. So, Michael, I'm glad you're raising the issue about this election. It couldn't be more important.
Well, Heather, how much of Congress is on the ballot? The current thinking has been for a long time that the Democrats could possibly hold the Senate and would probably lose the House. But that was before the Roe versus Wade decision came down from the Supreme Court. So what do you say to the media out there talking about the Democrats will have a hard time holding the House and even the Senate? What's your take on how things look for us?
My reaction is, yes, we can, but only if we organize. If we don't organize, then we know nothing good will happen. But when you organize, often in times of the greatest challenges, you can make the greatest progress. We have seen sea changes going on since the middle of June and the Roe decision at the Supreme Court, in part because it is the most intimate decision of a person's life about when or whether or with whom we'll have a child. And we have seen an explosion of women particularly coming out to vote, and younger women also. There's now a 55% balance of the increase in registration has been 55% women, particularly in those states where there have been Senate marginal states. And then you also look at who the candidates are on the Republican side, because so many of them are just batshit out of their minds. And they are, people who believed you should overturn an election because they lost. They know they lost. And that's not how we were brought up to think we should function. So when people start choosing between candidates, who's for assault weapons or who's for actually limiting gun violence, who's for reproductive freedom or who's not, there is a move now towards the Democrats, but only if we organize will we turn it out. And we saw last night, there was an election in Alaska, right, with the first Native American, person and the first woman will now be elected to this at-large seat that's been held for over 50 years by a Republican in Alaska. And it was made possible because there has been an outpouring against this MAGA Republican faction, by the way, defeating Sarah Palin.
Yeah, her name is, let me get it right, Mary Peltova. And she is, as you say, the first Native to be elected. It's to fill a gap, and she'll have to run again in November for the next 2 years. But this was a good sign. Let me ask you again a little bit about how it's looking in the House, even in the Senate. What races are crucial to win, would you say?
Well, on the Senate side, there are 3 open seats. First of all, 2 more seats, and we can change the rule in the Senate that only needs a 50% plus one majority. And right now we're 2 votes short of that majority. And that would change the filibuster rule. Amongst the things that would go through, the president's already said he would sign something to codify Roe. The House has already passed the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. They've passed significant additional sensible gun legislation and other rules. So we think that that will pass with 2 more seats in the Senate. So on the Senate side, there are 3 open races, 3 races where the seat is open. It had been held by a Republican, but now we have to see who will win it. And that is in Pennsylvania with John Fetterman, who is a man of the people. He has on his arm, he was the mayor of a small town in Pennsylvania, and he has on his arm the tattoos of the dates of each person who was killed by gun violence while he was mayor. It just shows you where his heart is, his commitment is. And he's running against this phony Dr. Oz. So that's Pennsylvania. North Carolina, Sherry Beasley, an excellent candidate. An open seat. North Carolina is a difficult place, but we can do it if we turn out. Ohio, Tim Ryan, who is totally functioning as an economic populist, pro-labor Democrat, and has a real chance. But again, we need to turn out. There are 2 seats where we need to turn it from Republican held to Democratic held. Wisconsin, the current lieutenant governor is Mandela Barnes. He actually comes out of the movement. Not only does his name Mandela Barnes, what do you think? But also he was a community organizer. He worked on a program that Bob Creamer had originally worked on, and then worked with a number of community-based organizations. And as one of us, he could be on this podcast as a regular participant. And then in Florida, former chief of police Val Demings. So she brings an African-American candidate, brings the seriousness about caring about policing that will serve a community, and is a very progressive candidate. And then there are incumbents where we need to keep those seats. And this is also a challenge. There are 5 seats. Georgia, it's Raphael Warnock, a minister who has just been a moral guide. In Arizona, Mark Kelly, former astronaut, but it's a tough state. But we can win if we organize. Nevada, Senator Catherine Cortez Masto, again difficult terrain, but a purple state, and we can win. New Hampshire, Senator Maggie Hassan. It's always been a challenge there. And Colorado for Michael Bennet. And then in many of those states, there are also governor's races that are also critically important. Looking for my governor's list right now. In Wisconsin, Tony Evers is running, and there is now a virtual ban on abortion in Wisconsin. And there's been a fight going on since they tried to destroy the unions and decimated them in the past, but we can build back. So Wisconsin on the governor, Michigan on the governor. The governor Whitmer her life has been threatened because of this MAGA faction. In Pennsylvania, the Republican governor candidate, Mastriano, not only supports January 6th, but he is anti-Semitic, racist, and he embraces having a white Christian nation explicitly. And then we have Josh Shapiro, who's running as the Democratic candidate. Arizona has a governor's race, Florida, Georgia, Stacey Abrams, Nevada, Kansas, Oregon, and Hawaii. Those are the other more marginal races.
So you don't include Beto in that one, huh? Do you think Beto has a chance in Texas?
Of course. The truth is, yes, I should have included Beto. Katy, thanks for raising that. The truth is, all of these and more are possible if we organize.
All right. So you keep talking about if we organize. So this is the question I kind of really want to get at. As an organizer who's been translating movement into electoral politics for many decades now, how do you suggest engaging volunteers at this political moment? I mean, we don't have more than, I don't know how many quiet days are left. but clearly people are starting to pay attention. And so my concern always, and I think Katie's too, when we're doing the show, we will ask people, encourage them to go out and talk to others, and anywhere they know there's some Democrats, encourage people to vote. How would you say at this, in these final days, so to speak, we can get more people active?
Got several very concrete suggestions. Broadly, I talk about 4 M's, that we need members. We need to recruit people. We need more volunteers. And you can do that with calls, with texting. People, we can give you lists for you to call on your own or in a group with their phone banks and other efforts. We'll come back to that. And door-to-door work. There's message. We have to send the message out, just like Mike, you and Katy are doing on this program. But whether it's op-eds, letters to the editor, talking to our friends, sending out the message about the importance of this election and voting and doing the work. Number 3 is money. We do need to send money. Many of us may not have a lot, but even small amounts matter. You say, oh, but they've got so much money. Yes, but they're being swamped often by the other side. So we members, message, money, and movement. We just need to show up and have the visibility to show the powerhouse that we are and can be. Now, ways to be involved, it depends on where you are and what you want to do. I actually have one particular recommendation that a friend of mine, Michael and Sarah, who Michael, you may particularly know. He was also
from STS. He's up in Boston area, I think.
Came out of that background and now is running something called Together. And it's an all volunteer effort that helps individuals. I've also got some group suggestions, figure out where can I be most effective. And if you go to the website, www.togetherweelect.org, there'll be a way you can click on to get started. And there will be a personal coach who will contact you and say, what kind of work do you want to do? Do you want to do phone calls? Do you want to do texting? Can you physically go to a place? Could you do door-to-door? Is there a state you're interested in? What kind of race are you interested in? And they will match you up. You can either do it virtually or in the state.
Heather, let me ask you a question about that.
Yeah.
Can I? Is there a way to get on that Together We Elect and say, and be a person who says, here's my name and number for Illinois, for example?
Yes, they can. I'm told that I've tried it out for a few states. I know North Carolina and some others, but I think they can in each state say, here are the groups of how you can be connected. Okay. Now, in addition, in specific states like Illinois, and you'll know this better than I do, Katy, because you're from Illinois, where there are important state Supreme Court races that are coming up. And the local races matter also. There are key organizations. Citizen Action of Illinois is one that I particularly am fond of. There's also Personal PAC, which is doing extraordinary work around the elections. Indivisible has a good operation. There's a group called Swing Left nationally that can connect people around congressional races.
How about Sunrise? Is there a group Sunrise or Sun something?
Yeah, Sunrise is a terrific group. It's largely younger people, I think, have worked particularly on climate issues and gun violence issues. And it's great. There are so many organizations. There's Planned Parenthood. There's NAACP. There's so many groups. It is important, though, to connect with a group because you don't need to do it on your own.
Okay, this is good. And let me just repeat that for people. You go to www.togetherweelect.org. And I want to ask Katy, Heather, you brought up the Illinois Supreme Court races. One of the things that Katy wants to talk about, and I want her to talk about, is where she is going to be working this election. Because those who are regular listeners to the show know that Katy Hogan registers a lot of voters, does a lot of campaign work. And I know she's going to work with our Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky. Katy, talk a little bit about what your plans are for the next couple of months.
Yeah, just to really just dovetail with what Heather just said, I'm going to work starting today, actually, for Jan, Once again, thank you, Jan, for putting me to work on what I wanted to do anyway. But so, yeah, we are concentrating. This is the 9th CD traveling cavalry. We go out to the other districts, whichever ones need the most help. And as you mentioned, Heather, what we're going to concentrate on is going to the 2nd and 3rd districts of the Supreme Court to push those two candidates.
Illinois Supreme Court.
Sorry?
I'm just saying Illinois Supreme Court, so everyone's clear.
Okay. Yes. And we'll be pushing the entire ticket, of course, in those districts, including the congressional folks who we elected 4 years ago. That'd be Sean Casten and Lauren Underwood, as well as Bill Foster. All of them have those Supreme Court races in their districts. We'll also be trying to introduce a new congressperson in the 13th, which is a brand new district. That's Nikki Budzinski. And we have a guy out on the west of the state, Sorensen, who has a MAGA candidate to run against. So while I would love to join the trail up to Wisconsin, my job is going to be concentrate on Illinois and push the blueness of us all, particularly based on how we've become a state in the middle of abortion vacuum. We've got a lot of people traveling to this state for healthcare. So
Katie, let me ask you, that Sorensen race out on the western part of the state, is that the Lane Evans seat, the old Lane Evans seat?
Well, it's a redraw. No, actually, it's north of that.
Okay.
I believe it's north of that. That district has been divvied up many times since. Good old Lane.
Katy, Jan Schakowsky is so lucky to have you. You are such a joy. People flock to you, and you know how to put them to good use. So anyone who wants to have a good election experience, connect with Katy Hogan. Maybe Katy should, or should they just connect with the Schakowsky campaign?
Well, I'll be this campaign, and I think my email is katyhogan@janschakowsky.gov, but I'm not sure actually at the moment. But I am full-time doing this, so you can reach me through Michael, through the radio, any which way. If you know me, pick up the phone and call me, because actually, this is the thing. What you said is the most important, Heather, is we need people to get up and activate. We have 10 weeks. That's all we've got. And it truly is a moment, yet another Save the Republic moment. But I really believe this is this is the most important one so far, because Biden is on a good trail at the moment. And the media keeps drumming really negative messaging, questioning, one of the Democrats going to get it together. And I want to say, what are you talking about? We're working like a well-oiled machine out there against all the MAGA forces, while the trial of Trump is, hopefully grinding towards. We're keeping a lot of balls in the air, is what I feel. So I'm most concerned about just getting the volunteers that we need to do the carpools out to these various districts. And they're not long rides for the most part. We will take a long ride down to Champaign-Urbana one weekend. We will go out to Rockford another, but basically people can canvass with us every weekend from now on. And you're right to mention the other groups. Indivisible has been going to Wisconsin for weeks with lots of Chicago folks. Swing Left is great. And there's a lot of folks working. Unfortunately, the loss of a right has had a good result of activating a lot of people who might not have, had they not just lost the right to their own health care and reproductive freedoms. So, yeah.
Let me ask Heather if you have any parting thoughts. I was going to ask about the role in the media and hindering public thought, but I think Katy addressed that. But you may have some comments, or either of you, any final comments in our campaign to get more people involved in turning out the vote in November?
Well, our future is at stake. our
Amen.
kids' futures, for us, our grandkids' futures. And what we know from past history is that when we've organized, and I often say we organize with love at the center, we have made the most dramatic change. And we can do that now. I'll say one last thing. Many know that I was in the civil rights movement, and people often used to say, are you willing to die for freedom? And though I wanted to live, I was willing to take that risk if that's what was involved when I was in Mississippi. But now the real challenge is, are you willing to live for freedom? Are you willing to do the work every day, to make the phone calls, to do the texts, to go door to door, to talk to your neighbors, to recruit others, as Katy was saying? It's a short period of time, and whether you do it for the whole 9 or 10 weeks left, or if you do it just for the last weekend, we need you now. And if we do the work every day, we will make this a more just and democratic and caring world.
All
Well,
power to
thank you,
the
Heather.
people.
Yeah. Hey, Katie, you have anything to add to that?
How could I?
Okay. Well, I want to thank the two of you. I really admire you both. I apologize to our viewers, not the listeners, but the viewers, because you don't see Katie's picture. We're not sure of the tech issue on that.
We love Katy. We love Katy Hogan.
And I encourage everyone to stay tuned. We'll be back with more Live from the Heartland for the week of September 3rd. We're going to have Ron Schulz, who has a new book out. He's going to talk about his adventures many years ago. Stay tuned. After a little music, we'll be right back with more Live from the Heartland. Power to the people. See you, ladies. See you, women, sisters. Welcome back to more Live from the Heartland. I'm Michael James, and we are here recording for the week of September 3rd. And I'm really happy to bring on now a guy who we met way back sometime. We'll try to get at the exact details. But I know he's been following this radio show for a number of years. And he wrote a new book called Chicago Rage. I'm talking about the one, the only, incomparable Ronald Schulz out there in Seattle. And I knew you wrote the book, Ron, and I asked you if you wanted to come on the radio. You sent me a copy, and I finished it last night. I had been reading it a little bit every day. I was mistaken in thinking that it was a novel. It's a memoir, but it's an outrageous memoir in some ways. I mean, in terms of your activities, basically, it's about you. In your youth, at 17, you'd already run away from home. You'd been out in Taos in some collectives or communes. You'd come back. You were living in the woods. You hit Old Town, up and down Lincoln Avenue, met a woman, went to New York, had a little adventure, then came back to Chicago, got involved in some heavy stuff in the streets. And then you're telling us you're writing some more books. So how are you doing today?
Hey, terrific. Yeah, I'm here at a hotel room in sunny Washington, which is taking over from Nevada here, becoming more like Nevada every day or every year with our climate change. And yeah, I'm doing terrific. I'm glad, I started writing and, I've written a bunch of other things that didn't go anywhere, by the way. Getting published is not by any means easy, but after I got pushed into it by a few friends who knew me and knew my story a little bit, I decided to write it. And I think we all need to get our stories out there. We're all part of a larger framework, a jigsaw puzzle that makes up history. So our personal story, I mean, leaders are nothing without followers, or, sometimes we change places, But yeah, write. I tell people out there, write your story. Go ahead.
No, I really like reading memoirs, and I liked reading this. It's pretty exciting in parts, pretty challenging. I suffer for the lack of sleep you had at certain times, the amount of drugs, and the amount of sex. There's a lot of sex in it. Why don't you give our listeners and our viewers a little synopsis of what the book is about? See if I come close to it.
All right. It's my version of On the Road, but I think more authentic than the original. There's a lot of On the Road stories out there. But this one, of course, it's unique. I was 17 at the time. As Michael says, I'd had a rather adventurous childhood before that, running away at 15 to New Orleans and getting busted and, et cetera stuff. But I really knew there was big issues in our country. I wanted to find the revolution, or at least my place in it. I was always kind of looking for alternatives to the culture that I grew up in. In the 50s, racism was right in my face. I saw a lot of negativities, and I was looking at a communal ideal or somehow a alternative counterculture thing. And okay, first of all, before this book, there's another book which is out there. I went to Taos, New Mexico, and Drop City, Colorado. Got involved in that scene. May have met Charlie Manson, or at least a lookalike who had the same vibe, and definitely met some of his girls, because later in the year, when I saw him on TV, I said, Jesus, that looks like the guy, So, but our country is full of various forms of sociopaths running loose. And yeah, man's son and son of man, that's how I remembered him from being described to me before the murders. But anyway, no, I didn't get mixed up with them. And came back. Yes, as Michael says, my life suddenly exploded when I went down to Chicago, had a series of relationships with people, and ended up hitchhiking to New York with a lady named Bonnie, who, as she so proudly exclaimed, was a member of the Up Against the Wall MFers, as the full name would be, but they went by the MFer logo. And unfortunately, it was an age of paranoia, and and I ended up, my dear girlfriend put me into the Bowery. There we go. I was in the Bowery, which I'd seen the Bowery Boys on TV before that. That's all my knowledge of New York, really. But anyway, it wasn't working out somehow. I kind of felt like I was being cut adrift. And as fortune would have it, I ran into Karen, and we ran into a flyer, an SCS flyer, which talked about tearing down Pig City, Chicago, as they termed it. And I decided, hey, that's where I belong. What am I doing here in New York? And so broke, as we were, flat broke, basically, we hitchhiked out on a more adventurous trip back to Chicago than coming in.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it was my own mistake, missing my exits, talking too much with the driver and forgetting that I wanted to be let off at a better, and ended up spending a long time traveling through Americana, which was nonetheless fascinating to me. Riding with a alcoholic or a drunken guy through West Virginia, who ended up in an accident. And anyway, it's a long story, but you got to read it.
It brings back so many memories, just hitchhiking. I mean, I remember hitchhiking once coming back from Mexico. I was coming from Chicago to heading to Connecticut, and late at night trying to sleep on the side of the road, being hitchhiking up from Alabama, where a friend had driven me, and I'd back up to Lake Forest College, and being in a car full of drunk people, and lucky I got out of that. You brought back a lot of memories. But when you get back to Chicago in this book, you get involved with the Weathermen and their Days of Rage. I have a connection to that too, in that I went to follow and see what was happening. And when a guy grabbed a friend I was with, I tried to separate them, and then got jumped by some police. And one of them said he's got my effing blackjack when I was holding on to. He was hitting me on the head. Anyhow, the Days of Rage were something else. You got carried away during the Days of Rage, and but then I think at the end of the book, you kind of see that you're going to go in some new direction.
Yeah, I had no choice. I went to jail. That tore me away from Karen, I'm afraid. I'd love to see Karen Mookie, if you're out there in the world somewhere. I'd love to hear back from you. It's been a long time. Yeah, in fact, we had very similar experiences. You got busted in your experience. I got busted in mine. And I, yeah, I mean, the Weathermen, okay, I kind of saw them as a necessary evil. I think they were, the more I got to know them, they were a little on the crazy side. I mean, I saw it as a self-destruct kamikaze type thing. And I heard the speech, by Black Panther Fred Hampton, outside the criminal court building. And of course, he called the Weathermen custoristic, which I had already been through the first Wednesday of the rage, and I pretty well saw that was true. But I was young, full of gumption, and I kind of had some, just kind of wanted to see how this would go. I had my own demons, I guess you would say. And yeah, I can't blame the Weathermen for being any crazier than I was, but it was like a shooting star that's going to burn itself out. But that's kind of the way I thought that they would mature, into a less. I mean, like I say, I ran into Kay in a Weatherman meeting, planning session, and they were talking about killing her because of her pacifistic views. I mean, of course, I knew it would all be talk, but you never know. And we ended up hooking up a little bit there. We became we should have listened to my better angels and gone with her early back to Grinnell, Iowa, which would have been a whole different story.
Well, this is it's pretty interesting reading, and for those people who were around in those times or want to know more, you use a lot of real places. You're on Lincoln Avenue. You're going to Alice's restaurant. Alice's Revisited. The feed store. There are people in the book that many of us, some of them who've been on the show, talk about. And your book actually had a publisher. Some of these books I've been interviewing people are self-published, which is fine with me. But this is Tumbleweed Books. It's out of Canada. And the name of the book, once again, is Chicago Rage, subtitle, A Memoir of the 1960s Chicago Riots. And what's been the response to your book so far?
Well, it's very newly out there. Unfortunately, Tumbleweed Books has ARC Reviewers. I think it's a sub company or something where they offer 25 early reviews to anybody who wants it for free. And guess what? Everybody likes fantasy. Nobody likes anything smacking of real life, or at least their audience, shall I put it. So I got 0 responses, unfortunately. Actually, I have 2 reviews on Amazon, and it hasn't gotten out there, to be quite honest with you. It hasn't, although everybody who reads it tells me it's great,
Well, I really enjoyed reading it. I mean, it did bring back a lot of memories, and I was really impressed with the detail. One of the things that strikes me, though, that if I was thinking in the present tense, you would have been an awful smart guy. I mean, you were already into a lot of Buddhism, your spirituality. You had a pretty wide understanding of politics and things were going on in the world. Were you actually that sharp back in that day, or did that sometime looking back you got sharper?
Well, I read a lot, and I thought a lot, and I meditated a lot. I can say that. I can't say for sure if I was smart. I mean, I ended up getting busted in a suicide mission to save somebody I didn't know, and lost my beautiful Karen forever. I don't think that was smart, but we all make crazy mistakes in life. I have to forgive myself a little bit there, or else I knock my head against the wall. But okay, I'm human, aren't we all? But we all got our ups and downs, And yes, I read a lot. I was really into all the same stuff. I try to be as realistic and honest as I can here. Of course, every time anybody writes about themselves, they either leave out, or I try to put in what I think is germane. Other people people who know me can tell me otherwise, but I got another one coming out about it involves you also, Michael, during the White Panther days of 1970, when I for sure met you in Elmhurst College. You were there to apparently take over a class, give a lecture. It was all coincidental, and that's in another book coming up.
So you got involved with the White Panthers. I remember the White Panthers. We were starting Rising Up Angry. So you got a new book already. Is it already written, or you?
I'm actually pounding it out now, best I can. I'm having a little trouble with this because I'm trying to pull in a lot of parts, So I'm kind of like spending a lot of time on that one. But I've got a lot more outside sources, shall I say, that I'm bringing in too. But anyway, the one that has just been accepted is the immediate sequel to Chicago Rage, which is my time in jail in the Nut House, because I ended up 10 days in Cook County Jail, which was we were segregated, the Weatherman population segregated from the other prisoners. But because I had maybe hit a cop and ripped his badge off, I ended up with a higher bail than most of these other guys. I never got any phone call or anything, but I don't know who else ever did. I don't know how that worked, but and because I wasn't a member of the Weathermen, I was low on the totem pole. So anyway, somebody called my father, probably from the defense committee or something, said, "Oh, by the way, your son's in jail." Oh, okay, shit. I guess I better bail him out or something. But they didn't know what to do with me, so they stuck me in a mental hospital where I met, my good friend Pete Fischetti, whose father was a cartoonist for the Chicago Daily News. He's involved in that book too. I forget his father's name, but he wrote Zinga Zinga Za, an interesting little kind of a Italian coming to America story and getting involved in the newspaper work and so on. Anyway, cartoonist work. But anyway, that's a whole other story. But it's coming. It's coming.
Let me ask you, I don't really know that much about you, except that I would, I know you were listening to the Live from the Heartland show, and then later we started doing emails and stuff. What have you been doing? What did you do for work in your life? And are you retired now, giving you time to write?
I'm semi-retired. I'm semi-retired. I got involved in a lot of different stuff. I worked in gold mines in the Black Hills. I worked in coal mines in Colorado. I was a security guard at various places where I couldn't find any other work. And then I put myself through, I was a high school dropout, but then I put myself through college between Long Beach, Colorado, and Seattle, Washington. I started there, ended up moving up to Washington for long, complicated reasons. And so anyway, I got a BA for what it's worth. And, I kind of ended up working as a security guard while I did that. And hey, at least I had a little time to study, but I was burning the candle at both ends. I've been doing that most of my life. I don't recommend it, but I'm still alive. Anyway, I can tell you that. Maybe.
You mentioned Long Beach, Colorado.
I'm sorry, Long Beach, California.
Okay, I was going to say, what body of water would that be on, that Long Beach?
The Pacific. In California, yes. But I did live in Colorado, near Aspen. Near Aspen, I worked at the coal mine down there they had a bus back in those days that drove us all the way down to, think of the name now. Anyway, it was the Intercontinental Coal, something like that. But anyway, I did a lot of different jobs, but mostly I got into health work out here in Seattle, working with older people. Me and my wife, my beautiful wife, got involved in we started an adult family home. And so we did that business from 1996. And hey, that got me out of poverty or, us out of poverty. My wife is more business minded than me. I'm a total flop. I can't hold on to money. I give it away.
Well, let me ask you a little bit about, when did you actually start writing? And you kind of indicated you had written earlier stuff. Have you been published other places?
Well, you talk about self-publishing. My first book, Spirit Quest 1969, just before the pandemic hit us, I guess some people call it vanity, some people call it a hybrid publishing. You know, you put the money up front, so it's a little more of a guided self-pub. Anyway, it's costs money. But yeah, I got that book out there. It went nowhere. I mean, the pandemic was here, and I don't think they did very much of a, you know. Okay, one problem with publishing memoirs right now is, you know how it is. It's the market, the invisible hand of the market. You know what's, I don't know. Anyway, it's hard to get published. A lot of people don't. A lot of publishers right now are saying, memoirs don't sell. You know, so it all depends. It all depends. You know.
Well, there are a lot of memoirs. I know our friend Peter Werby, who was the founder and still publisher of the Fifth Estate up in Detroit. He has a book that out about 6 months ago. You could actually find it on. You go to youtube.com/Heartland Media/videos and type in Peter Werby. You'll find it.
Yeah.
Well, what inspires you these days, Ron? I mean, in terms of the world, you got any hope for the world? You got any unhope? What's going on in your head?
It's a rocky road, you know, hope and all that stuff. You know, we've seen a lot of disappointments. Both of us have, I know. And it's not a perfect world and never will be. I've come to that conclusion. But hey, it's our world and I love it, man. I just love the ride. You know, we make the best of us. We're going to lose. If we lose every single battle, we still got to keep our hopes up there. We got to keep our spirit and our love. We got to love each other. You know, that's my bottom line here. We got to take care of each other. You know, we're all mirror images of each other to some degree. You know, does that make any sense?
It does. When was the last time you were in Chicago?
Wow. I believe it was a year and a half or 2 years ago, but I'm terrible. My older timeline, I keep track of better. This one is too much back and forth. I really move around a lot and can't keep track. I think it was like a year and a half ago, but just briefly, you know, it changed a lot. It's changed a lot. Of course, you know, I'm involved like you to some degree with Karma Farm up in Wisconsin. And we got a website connecting us a little bit, trying to, we're scattered. We're all scattered, our human family, but we try to be in touch. And I love Chicago. I almost went back there instead of Seattle, and I started to, but long story that I'll go in my future book dragged me out to Seattle here. And when after you've been somewhere for a while, all of a sudden you realize, hey, I must live here now. Maybe I'll live here now, you know. But then I spent 4 years in Japan. That's actually, that's where I got my nest egg. You know, we were able, you know, in order to help put myself through college, I joined the National Guard, and they had just started. You know, it goes up and down, so that helped me pay.
They let you in the National Guard after you'd been busted during the Weatherman stuff.
I told them all about it, but they called. I was right there watching them call Cook County and couldn't find any record of it. Now, guess what? Just recently, I tried to get global travel. What do you call this thing? This thing where you because I travel overseas a lot, you know. So gets you through the passport control easier. Global entry, I think they call it. And they drug up all this stuff and said, oh, well, you can't get it because of 1969. And another thing, which I don't even remember, and I think it was 76 or something. I said, shit, I think I wasn't even around then. But anyway, so I'm supposed to go back and get to show that these cases have been resolved. And so, yeah, I called. They don't have any. They burn that stuff. It's trashed. But all they have is some index that has me listed that I can't follow up on. So I won't get global entry, I guess. I have to go through the passport control like everybody else, the slow way.
Well, Ron, let me ask you one last question. You living out there on the West Coast, and you got a lot of climate change issues coming up. You've got it's always a kind of a hotbed of politics. Anything you want to share from your territory about the environment, politics, upcoming elections, etc.?
Yeah, vote blue. That's all we can do, you know.
Okay.
I mean, even if individually some Republican seems like a nice guy, and maybe he is, when it comes right down to it, most of them, with a very few exceptions, ended up voting as a bloc. You know, I mean, they used to blame the communists for doing that, but the Republican Party is the new. Don't join that, or don't have anything to do with that party, because it's proven to be fascistic. We don't want that. We want some form of democracy, doing the best we can. It's not perfect. Politics is never perfect. You're not going to marry the candidate, but we got to find a common ground and work with it. How's that?
That's good enough, brother. It's good talking to you. And when do you write? In the mornings, at the night, anytime it moves you?
Whenever I can fit it in. You know, I got a wife and a daughter and a son and grandkids, and I slide things in when I can. I got to get motivated. I usually am pretty motivated, but it comes and goes, But a lot of that depends on everything else going on in my life. But hey, I recommend it. It also helps you clarify who you are. I mean, for anybody, I don't care who you are, sit down, write some stuff down, and guess what? It activates a different part of your brain to reanalyze events. And I think that's helped me a lot to come to terms with a lot of different things.
Well, I want to thank you for sending me the book. I had a fun time reading it. I'll share it with other people, and hopefully you can send this little interview around the world, and maybe you'll sell a couple copies. But at least we had a good time.
I'll send you the next one too.
All right, brother. Couple of announcements before we go out. The Bitter Jester Musical Fest will be Sunday. That's tomorrow from when you're listening to the show or watching it. September 4th at Madame Zuzu's in Highland Park, 4 to 10:30. That's at 1876 First Street in Highland Park. Lots of musicians connected to the tragedy up in Highland Park. That would be a fun event. And also on Sunday over in Logan Square, there will be the Zine Mercado at the Comfort Station. And yes, I'll be there selling my books, my photos, and the Rising Up Angry covers posters. I think we're going to go out today with Chick Street Man, another guy from up in the Northwest, with his song Doing the Best You Can. And I want to thank everybody who makes the show possible. Emilio Davis, Lynn Orman Weiss, Imani Warren, Katy Hogan, and Tom Clark. Also our home base, WLUW 88.7 or WLUW.org. Thank you very much. We encourage you to do good in the world, because the world needs all the good that you do, that I do, that we do together. All power to the people. Have a great week. See you next week. Over and out.